Today I'm going to talk to you about my new book, Storm Dog, which is a little different for me. It's not historical. It's contemporary, told in first person through this whip-smart, slightly sassy 14-year-old girl named Ariel, who's a bit of a misfit. And through the course of the novel is trying to find herself and her self-definition and kind of a sense of belonging. And she does that through nature, music, her own creativity and imagination, a friendship with an Afghanistan war veteran, a lost dog who finds her in a storm, dog dancing, which is a thing, which I'll tell you more about, and the Shenandoah Apple Blossom Festival Parade. It's a little whimsical. Sometimes I think it might even be a little bit outrageous in humor. My children have told me that in tone they feel like it's a combination of Dumpling and because of Winn-Dixie. And if that's true, what a great compliment. Here's the prelude, and this is Ariel speaking to y'all. I was born in Tempest season, in the month of March, when the world has trouble deciding what season it wants to be. Round here in Virginia, that means temperatures can swing 30 degrees in a single day. We duck and cover through freak hailstorms and wild downpours that explode into being all of a sudden when a hopeful spring breeze stumbles up against leftover winter air that's curled up comfortable and happy against the Blue Ridge Mountains. I swear it makes the cold air mad. Bam! There's pushback, lightning and thunder, swirling clouds and gales that blow your hair every which way, like the ears of a dog hanging out the window of a car racing along Route 50. Snowflakes can mingle in tiny cyclones with pink blossoms that winds tear off the branches of flailing fruit trees. Creeks rage into tidal waves of brown, terrified water that can knock down high banks of spring bluebells that had just started to rejoice into life. The world is all cacophony, aggravation, and I can't figure out when I'm thinking tantrums. Sort of the way I feel all the time. According to my family, I've always been like that, coming into the world during one of those March weather ragers, thrashing and crying, a seismic surge of sound and sass and questions. Mama calls me the storm child, and she doesn't mean it in a nice way. Maybe that's why she doesn't like me. Too much noise, too much angst, just too much. I suppose I get her point. I can't remember a time that winds and waves weren't turning me up inside, but I just don't see the point in being all calm and cool about things. Seems like a whole lot of boring, still pond water to me, no matter how beautiful those glassy reflections are. That's the way my sister is, smooth, polished to an appealing sheen of perfect pretty. Nothing disquieting or annoying about her, in public anyway. Everyone says to me, "Why can't you be more like Gloria? Gloria would never break the window." That was a total accident, by the way. I just heard about David and Goliath in Sunday school and was testing out whether a slingshot and stone could really take down a giant. I wasn't aiming for Gloria's window, I swear. Gloria would never kick a hole in a door. My arms were full of books and nobody would open that stupid door for me. Gloria would never walk around with ketchup stains on her shorts. Honestly, when I eat with my family, things just seem to jump out of my hands. Gloria would never pout about a lovely pink ribbon being put in her hair. It was the size of a baseball mitt, okay? Gloria won the Miss Apple Blossom Outstanding Teen Contest when she was 15. During high school, she starred in all the plays that featured a blonde Barbie doll type character. People started talking about how she was sure to be discovered one day, like Marilyn Monroe was when a photographer just happened to walk into the munitions factory where she was working the assembly line and spotted her. Child, you are the spitting image of her, the church ladies would coo at Gloria on Sundays. Now, Gloria's 19 years old, and there's a chance she'll be chosen as one of the Shenandoah Festival princesses for this year's parade. If that happens, Gloria will be really famous around here, just from sitting and smiling, waving that cupped hand homecoming queen salute and floating down Washington Street on a cart decorated with sheets of plastic flowers. I can hear all the church ladies. When those Hollywood scouts see her in the parade, they'll snap Gloria up. She is going places for sure. Then they'll probably turn to me and say the type of thing they tossed at me when I snitched cookies from the rectory hall before the service, knocking over pitchers of apple juice, of course, onto the church's tablecloth in the process. Try to be a little bit more like your sister, Ariel. If you don't settle down, The rapture may pass you over and leave you in HE double hockey sticks. That's hell, in case you don't speak, church lady. Yep, that's me, the storm child. Sometimes I worry they may be right, though. When squalls roll up, spilling zigzag blue-black shadows across our pastures, ripping up trees and toppling them onto power lines to make sparks fly, it does seem like the devil is trying to take over God's good work. And I kind of like listening to the winds and watching lightning crackle across the skies like gigantic electrified snakes. But here's the honest truth. I like the afterward just as much. I love that miracle when a peephole of sunlight breaks through all those angry clouds and then spreads slowly, dissolving the dark into a luminous, heavenly blue. You can smell the earth greening up. And the singing of birds when they've ventured out from their hunkered down hiding spots, singing in joy at being saved from annihilation, well, they sound like a chorus of angels to me. I wish people could see that. I'd really rather not go to HE double hockey sticks. Because when everyone expects you to become a screw-up, it's hard to avoid becoming one. Almost like I'd disappoint them if I turned out well. I suspect that's what led me to my trouble. Although I have to admit the idea did just come to me. Nobody told me to do it. It all began after one of those wild, cymbal-crashing March thunderstorms that took out a bunch of trees just for fun during the night. That and a phone call during breakfast. Just talking in general about traits that'll kind of help you be a good writer or to be able to capture a story well when you do want to write. Stop talking and listen. Have your antenna up at all times. Be self-disciplined. Set goals, stick to them. Plan ahead. Don't wait until the last minute. I promise you, if you try to write something the night before it's due, you're going to freeze. Read all the time. Interview and talk with interesting people. They're going to have great stories to tell you. Absorb them. Listen. And then kind of mull over what the meaning is of them. Find the parable in them. A parable is kind of the lesson, what you can learn, the themes of a story. We'll talk about that more in a minute. I want to know your most inner thoughts. I want to know how you feel about things. I want to know how things affected you. But you are really a writer when you can do that, but also stand in the shoes of someone else and imagine what they're feeling and what they're thinking, given their reactions, how life might be affecting them. Practice, keep a journal, write for the school paper if you can. Write down snippets of descriptions and scenes and conversations. Watch people and how they react to things. I don't want to tell you to be an eavesdropper, but go someplace where you can watch people pass by and think about, I wonder why they're looking angsty today. If you can, one of the great things about being a journalist is listening to people talk and trying to write it down verbatim, exactly the way they say it, because dialogue may be the best character reveal of all. Again, we'll talk about that more later. So that leads me to a third way of finding an idea is to find a hole in coverage, right? Something that hasn't really been covered or written about enough, or hasn't been overwhelmed with things that have been written about in the past. Journalism really teaches you to do that. Now, I spend a lot of time in schools, which is a great privilege for me, talking to you all. And I knew that while you often read Fahrenheit 451 or the play The Crucible, that you might not have the time within your social studies to study the time period in which those works were written. Both of these important works were born in and reflect and comment on the 1950s Red Scare and McCarthyism, a time when books were banned, librarians were fired if they didn't pull those particular books off their shelves, people were blacklisted from jobs, all for expressing opinions that were deemed subversive, things like believing in civil rights or protective labor laws and unions or equal justice. These ideas, sometimes these people will be smeared as being un-American and hauled in front of loyalty review boards, suspected of being disloyal. And even the book Robin Hood was banned because he took from the rich and gave to the poor, and an Indiana textbook commissioner decided that was a communist philosophy and would poison the minds of young people reading the books. So it was pulled. So I wrote Suspect Red using all those things and was able to really kind of look at the trickle down impact of a political leader's hate language and rhetoric on two teenage boys from different sides of the political spectrum and their friendship. It explores the importance of thinking for oneself, not delving into mob mentality, of not accepting innuendo and rumor as fact. And that was all from just kind of recognizing that there wasn't really a historical novel set in that time. I hope it provides you all meaningful discussion about media literacy and the importance of participating in democracy and thinking for yourself. Now let's go back to Storm Dog, which I hope is a prime example of a fifth source for ideas, which is spotting story, which is honestly just seeing something and thinking, whoa, what is that about? I want to learn more about that. That sounds like a story. This means that you have to be watching life and have those antennae up, like I talked about before, y'all, because life will drop gems in front of you, but you have to be paying attention. I wasn't looking for a story idea when I just happened to open up in National Geographic and see this really interesting article about the healing powers and magic of dance. And within that essay was one photo of a woman who was pirouetting with her golden retriever and doing musical freestyle. And I thought, what? What's that? That's fascinating. So now in my magazine days, I would have found a dog trainer and his or her dog, followed them through creating a routine, and then on to a competition at a dog show, which would have been really interesting. But with a novel, I get to incorporate more. I can use symbols and themes and metaphors that expand the parable of that life experience of the dog trainer and the dog. And I can add in subplots and minor characters who could serve as foils. So, storms. There are several of them during the book. They are definitely a metaphor for Ariel's internal upheavals and storms, and winds and, conundrums and how she's feeling about herself. Storms throw things out of whack. They make you focus on what's really important to you. And storms can lead to revelation and redefinition, just as, massive downpours can, wash away, dirt and weeds and things like that and produce kind of a clearing, that heavenly blue. Dog dancing, it's great fun, looks like. It's kind of quirky, and as such, it provides this really powerful symbol, I think, of self-expression and individuality, finding your own voice, and artistic partnership, right, between the trainer and the dog. The parade itself offers kind of an interesting standard definition of beauty that we can question a little bit through Ariel, I think. If someone's a jerk, is he or she really beautiful? There's a wonderful quote from Shakespeare that says, "Beauty lives with kindness," that I really like. Finally, the catbird it represents the importance of inner beauty. Ariel calls the catbird the jazz singers of birds, and she says, quote, "You'd completely miss that dull-looking, all-gray catbird's improvisational magic if all you thought about was his appearance." Sky Meadows Park, y'all, is only an hour's drive west of Tyson's Corner, and I hope you can go and see it someday. It's gorgeous. Go walk those trails and feel the winds that kiss the earth up there if you can. Setting can also set up the conundrums, some of the conundrums of problems that will be facing your protagonist. It's interesting, the geographic setting of Storm Dog, where I've grown up, and I've spent except for college, spent my life in this area. So I've watched it change. I've known all of its elements all my life. There's a really fascinating kind of push-pull between disparate and neighboring cultures and philosophies in Ariel's world. Conservative liberal, city suburbs, suburbs country, and the poison of stereotypical expectations and xenophobia. Within a 70-mile radius, 75 square miles of Ariel's world in this northwest corner of Virginia, you will find elbowing one another, some of these pictures that I have there, 19th century country estates and equestrians who still ride to the hounds chasing foxes, with designer boutique luxury shopping meccas, $1 million plus track homes, and family working farms and orchards that are still that are picked by migrant workers and immigrants, and lots of people who are kind of barely scraping by. The area kind of bubbles with frictions and prejudices and misunderstandings between all these very different people because of stereotypes, expectations. And it was really important to me when I realized that my characters could deal with and resolve some of these differences and misconceptions through personal exchanges and actually coming to know one another. And here's another example that I'll just go back to Hamilton and Peggy. With Peggy Schuyler, nothing existed in her own hand during the American Revolution, so I had to research her through other people and people who knew her. And Hamilton's letters proved to be this incredible motherlode of gold about Peggy, who he called instantly Sprightly Peggy or My Little Sister, and he dropped all this gossip about her in his letters to Eliza. Within days of meeting Eliza, Hamilton actually writes Peggy, saying he'd already formed a more than common partiality for her person and mind because of a miniature portrait that Eliza has painted and carries with her of Peggy. Hamilton playfully begs Peggy as a nymph of equal sway to please come to Morristown to distract the other aides de camp from Eliza so that he can monopolize Eliza to himself. Now, I wish I had time to share that letter because it gives you a taste of the real delight of primary documents, the sense of someone from long ago sitting down right beside you and whispering into your ear all their hopes and longings and fears, and with Hamilton, this braggadocio and kind of bad boy shtick, and vulnerability. He's really vulnerable and sweet in those letters. You can find them on my website. But basically for right now, just know that Hamilton is basically asking Peggy to be his wingman in his courtship of Eliza. Now, here's the big reveal. Upon receiving that letter, Peggy seems to have ridden out into the absolute worst winter ever recorded in American history. There were 28 nor'easters that recorded from November 1st through April 1st. At the time she rides out, there were 6-foot-high snowdrifts, and the temperatures were so cold that the New York harbor had frozen solid enough for cannon to be pulled across it. She has to ride 150 miles through enemy-occupied territory, where I promise you, loyalists would have been thrilled to capture a General Schuyler daughter and to hold her for ransom. So she could have been captured, she could have been lost in a blizzard, or she could have frozen to death on the way. But she goes for the love of her sister, I think, to kind of check out, who's this rogue who's riding her. What does it tell you about her? She was bodacious. With Gloria's boyfriend, Marcus, who actually is a wonderful contradiction of traits and one of my favorite characters in many ways. Someone who people might dismiss as a stereotypical hick, if you don't take the time to know him. They'd miss out on what an idealistic and smart and wise young man he is. I reveal those things with little brushstrokes like books that are in the back of his car, tossed in the car seat, devotionals for deer hunters, for instance, right next to a book he's reading, Don't Know Much About History, Everything You Need to Know About American History, and they're lying on top of a pizza outfit that he has to wear for a part-time job that he's working to try to save money to go to community college. A lot of his reveals come through his word choice and his colloquialisms, his quoting both scripture and Roman philosophers. Mark Twain actually said, "Don't say the old lady screamed, bring her on and let her scream," which is really true. One of my personal writing heroes is Anna Quinlan. She was a Newsweek columnist, a turned novelist, and she says, I spent decades writing down people's words verbatim, how real people talk. I learned that syntax and rhythm were almost as individualistic as a fingerprint. That one quotation, precisely transcribed and intentionally untidied, could delineate a character in a way that pages of exposition never could. It's definitely true with Marcus. You get a lot of him when he says to Ariel, "Think because I live in a trailer park and not some old fancy house like yours that I can't have good manners." With Ariel, her voice too is slightly edgy. It's hurt but hopeful. It's awestruck and idealistic about the beauty and nature. At the same time, she can throw some substantial shade about her peers. Those are all good character reveals.